40 years after the original, I think it's time we take a walk down the corridors of the Overlook Hotel in today's review from Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep. Dr. Sleep was directed by Mike Flanagan, who has worked on a lot of different Stephen King projects. Well, mainly just one, but all of his projects seem to have a Stephen King vibe. He's worked on Hush, The Haunting of Hill House, and of course Gerald's Game. And he's apparently working on another adaptation of a Stephen King work, which they haven't really released yet. They're not telling us what it is. But Mike Flanagan is an amazing director. He's one of the best horror directors of this decade. Dr. Sleep is a sequel to The Shining. And it is a sequel adapted from the book. But Mike Flanagan very intelligently combined the book and Stanley Kubrick's The Shining to give us kind of the best of both worlds. So we can have our cake and we can eat it too. Historically, Stephen King hated The Shining, but I feel like Mike Flanagan must have went in with a pitch in mind, because apparently Stephen King really did enjoy this movie, and that was kind of a shocker to me, considering how much he hates The Shining. But there's no denying the visual pleasure of watching The Shining and being able to return back to the Overlook Hotel, which we do in the last 20 minutes of this movie. Ewan McGregor plays Danny Torrance, who is now all grown up and has followed in his father's footsteps of having an alcohol problem, and he struggles with that throughout his entire life. Rebecca Ferguson plays Rose the Hat, who is the leader of True Knot, a cult that travels around in RVs, preying on children who have the ability to shine. They do this because they are able to suck the shine out of them in what they call the mist. The mist comes out and they are able to engulf it and even put it in these canisters and save it for later. By doing this, they elongate their lives. So we get the idea that Rose the Hat has been around for hundreds of years, and some of the people that's in the cult, especially the elderly gentleman that is in the True Knot, he's apparently been around for thousands of years. So they run around and they prey on people, and the people with the gift of the shine is few and far between at this point. And this is where Kylie Carone, I think I'm saying her last name correctly, she plays Abra Stone. She is a child who has the ability to shine like no other. She is able to communicate with Ewan McGregor from a very young age, all the way up until she's a preteen. So we know that she's able to shine better than anyone has ever shined before. In doing this, she communicates with Danny. This is where they team up. And then the fight is on, and it is essentially Danny and Abra versus the True Knot. We also have Dick Halloran, who has returned as a spirit, who kind of shows up through Danny's life and guides him along in these very important moments. And that was really cool to see. I thought the guy who played him did an amazing job at playing Dick Halloran. I totally fell into the movie. I bought everything they were doing. I thought it was fantastic. I thought Mike Flanagan directed the hell out of this movie. It is a long movie, but it goes by very quickly, and it's very satisfying. There's a lot of scenes of psychic battles, and I think it's the best interpretation of a psychic battle you could ever see. If I could compare it to anything, it would be similar to the psychic battles that take place in Dreamcatcher. So if you've ever seen Dreamcatcher, there is a psychic battle that occurs with an entity that has taken over someone's body, and that person still exists, but they are just inside of their mind now. And they're battling with this other entity in a psychic way. But I compare it to that, except this is much better. So I thought the movie was fantastic. I think it's total fan service. I think Ewan McGregor was amazing. Rebecca Ferguson was a force to be reckoned with as Rose the Hat. There's a few other really interesting characters like Snakebite Charlie, and Jacob Tremblay is in the movie. He plays a kid who has the ability to shine. He's in the movie for a hot second, but it's definitely one of the more interesting scenes. 100%, I say check out Dr. Sleep. I think this movie is amazing. I think it's one of the best movies that come out this year. And a year with films like The Joker, The Irishman, and Dr. Sleep, those are my 3 favorite this year. So I definitely suggest checking those out, 100%. There's plenty of gore. There's a lot of really cool ghost action, especially in the last 20 minutes of the movie. So definitely check out Dr. Sleep. Now, that was the non-spoiler part of this. If you haven't seen this movie, I suggest you click out of here and you go on, because this is your opportunity, because I'm about to dive into the movie a little bit. So this is your opportunity. 3, 2, 1, you've been warned.
You're magic. Like me.
I don't know about magic. I always called it the Shining. The world is a hungry place. A dangerous place.
Okay, so the movie starts out, we have Danny Torrance as a small child. This takes place directly after the events of The Shining. And we see that Doc Halloran, who is dead, is still with Danny as a spirit and helps him. The spirits from the Overlook are still haunting Danny. The lady in the tub, the twins. And Dick Halloran teaches Danny how to lock these spirits away in little like Chester cases inside of his mind. So that's where these spirits now reside and live, is inside of Danny's mind. And they're locked away. Visually, they show this by showing the labyrinth, the hedge maze. And in the hedge maze is a line of these cabinets that open up, and that's where these spirits live. The hedge maze is inside of Danny's mind, and that's where these spirits reside. He's locked them away. He's found a way to beat them. Now, we skip forward. Danny is all grown up, and he has the same problems his father had, which is a really bad drinking problem and a addiction problem. Danny is sleeping with this young lady that he met at the bar, and he wakes up in the morning and he notices that she's passed out and there's vomit all over the pillow, and there was definitely cocaine and maybe some other heavy drugs being used there. And as he's going to sneak out, he sees a small baby, and he's going to leave the baby there, but Doc Halloran shows up and is like, come on, man, don't take all their rent, because he's going to steal their money too. So he's like, don't take all of our money and leave the baby, and So he picks up the baby and he sets the baby down on the bed. He then leaves, and he kind of has a come to God moment where he gets on the bus and he just goes to a random town, and he gets out there and he's like, I'm going to get my life together. And he goes to AA meetings. In doing this, one night he wakes up in the morning, and the girl who was passed out next to him is there, but now she's all covered in flies, and she's like, no one ever found us, and we see that the baby has died too. So he blames himself for this. He gets a job working at a nursing home, and as these people are passing away, he kind of guides them, into this ordeal, and he tells them it's like sleeping a long time, and he helps them recount memories from their childhood, really happy moments. And as they're passing away, it's not a painful experience for them because of him, and this is where he gets the nickname Dr. Sleep. Subsequently, on the other side of the United States, there is a cult called the True Knot. The True Knot is a cult that is full of these people who have the ability to shine. But they've also figured out that if they murder these kids who have the ability to shine, in the moment of fear and death, the shine comes out of them in a mist form, and they are able to engulf that mist and even keep it in little canisters. And by doing that, it prolongs their life. So we get the idea that Rose the Hat she could be hundreds of years old. Jacob Tremblay is one of these kids that gets killed, and this is an extremely disturbing scene. It's one of the most disturbing scenes I've seen in years, and it's because Jacob Tremblay acts his ass off in this movie. Subsequently, when he dies, Abra, who is so strong at shining, is able to see it. And in doing that, Rose the Hat is now connected to Abra. She sees Abra, she realizes what Abra is, and realizes that her ability to shine is so strong that they could literally live off her mist for hundreds of years, Abra communicates with Danny Torrance and tells him that she needs help. Danny doesn't want to do it. And he's visited by Dick Halloran at this point, who he hasn't seen in years. And Dick Halloran says, you need to help this kid because they're going to find her. And Ewan McGregor is hesitant to do it. And Dick Halloran says, listen, you owe the world this. You got to right a wrong that happened in your own life. And they didn't flesh this out very well, but what he's talking about is how he allowed the woman and the baby to die. And there's kind of this karma thing going on. So he has to right this wrong. And in helping Abra, he is redeeming himself for the afterlife. Or for whatever reason. He's just redeeming himself by helping her. He does help her, and this is where we get a really cool scene. There's a shootout in the woods that is really great. I've heard some people talk about how this tonally didn't feel like the rest of the movie, and that is true. It doesn't feel like the rest of the movie, this small portion. But it does set up the end of the movie, which is where Rose the Hat follows Danny and Abra to the Overlook Hotel. And a really cool scene here is where Danny tells Abra to stay outside. He's like, I gotta go in, I gotta power up the Overlook. And even though he does turn on the furnace, that's not what he means. The second he walks in the door, the lights begin to come on because his ability to shine is powering up the Overlook. It's a really cool scene. And Mike Flanagan and the production designing took the actual blueprints from Stanley Kubrick's movie whenever they built the interior of the Overlook and just recreated that exactly. So this looks identical to The Shining, to the Overlook in The Shining. It is identical. Rebecca Ferguson then shows up, and we get one of the best scenes, which is a psychic battle where Danny is going to try and trap Rebecca Ferguson inside of one of the crates in his mind. Rose the Hat realizes this, and this is whenever an additional battle ensues, but in the real world. Danny realizes that he's not winning. And Rose the Hat sees inside of his mind. She sees all the crates lined up, and she can sense that there's spirits in there, but she's very cocky about this entire thing. And she's like, ooh, what are those spirits? And then one of the best lines in the movie is whenever Danny says yes, and they're starving. And he opens up the crates. And this is whenever the entire Overlook comes to life. And all the spirits are there. And we see the twins. And we see all the spirits that resided inside of his mind have now been let loose. The Overlook is completely alive now, and they just completely engulf Rose the Hat. I mean, it just like that. She's done. She has no power against these things. And neither does Danny at this point. It's too much for him. And they overtake his mind, and he becomes his father in the movie. Speaking of his father, earlier on, whenever he goes inside the Overlook, he does run into his father again in a very poignant scene inside of the bar. The famous bar where Jack Torrance is drinking with the bartender. And he plays, Jack Torrance is the bartender in this movie and tries to get Danny to drink again, but Danny refuses. And in doing this, defeats one of the main demons in his life, which is coming to terms with his father and coming to terms with his alcoholism and realizing that those two are one entity. The alcoholism and his father are very linked together, and the abuse that he subsequently received from his father at the Overlook all those years before. But anyways, Danny is turned into his father at this point. He's trying to hunt down Abra. He's the motel is, or the Overlook is completely engulfed him, and he's became evil himself. He has a moment of clarity, and he tells Abra to leave, and he goes down into the basement where the furnace is and cranks it up. And this is where Mike Flanagan kind of pays respect to the end of the original Shining, because he does what Stephen King did at the end of The Shining in the book, which is destroy the Overlook. In this moment, we see the Overlook is on fire. He's in the basement, and as the camera pans back, we see Danny as a small child again, and the spirit of his mother is there, and she embraces him. And we see Abra standing outside, and she's watching the entire Overlook burn down. We cut to X amount of time later. Abra is inside of her room, and Danny is there talking to her. And her mother walks in and says, "Who are you talking to?" And the camera pans back, and Danny's gone. We see that Danny has now become the Dick Halloran to Abra. So he's helping her. He's going to guide her through her life and be there for her whenever she needs him. So at the end of this movie, it ends on a very happy note. But getting there was so amazing, and the journey that Danny's character went on was so phenomenal that I definitely suggest watching this. This is 100%. This is one of my top 3 movies of the year. Like I said, it's like The Irishman, The Joker, and Dr. Sleep, in no particular order would be the 3 that I would suggest. This movie is amazing. Check it out if you get a chance. That's Dr. Sleep. I'm looking forward to what Mike Flanagan does next, because he really is one of my favorite directors. So make sure to give Dr. Sleep a try, guys, because it really is phenomenal. It hasn't done very well at the box office, and I think that has to do with timing. I think it has to do with when it came out. I think it should have came out either in October or around Christmas time. But also the original Shining didn't do very well at the box office. So, hopefully as years go by, people will see Dr. Sleep for what it was, which was one of the best sequels to a horror movie that I've ever seen. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and that's Dr. Sleep.
Yes, you run, dear. And then I will find you, and you will scream for years.
Come play with us forever and ever.